All right, in this lesson, we are going to talk about how to use our calculator to write square root equations. And so this process is called square root regression. And so in this first problem, it says a physics class conducted an experiment comparing the period of a pendulum to the length of the pendulum. The results of the experiment are given in the table below. And so usually when they're making a table, the top numbers are your x and the bottom numbers are your y. And so when we make a scatter plot of these points, you would want to put the length along your x and the time along your y. Okay, and so I've already graphed the scatter plot to save time, and what I'm wanting you to realize from this data is it resembles a square root function where it starts at 0 and then it kind of tapers off. Okay, and so when we discover that it kind of forms a square root pattern, we are going to use a square root regression to write the equation. And so we've done linear regression, we've done quadratic regression, we've even done exponential regressions, but we've never done square root regression. And so there isn't actually an option for square root regression. So we use something called power regression. And so if the function were to be in this form, a times b to the x to fit this graph, we know it's going to be a square root function with some a value and it's going through 0. And so if you remember, we can rewrite square root as a 1/2 power. And so that means b would be 1/2. Okay, and so a power regression is used to write our square root regression. So a square root regression is the process of using technology to find a function of this form so that it best fits a set of data. If b is 0.5, then the function is a square root function. Okay, and so because your calculator calls it a power regression, I want you to write the word power above square root regression, power regression. Okay, so using our TI-84s, we are going to follow these steps. Okay, and so this online version of the calculator is similar to yours. Same buttons, same process. And so the first step is to press stat, and then the first option is edit. Okay, and then you are going to have an L1 and an L2 column. You are going to type your X values in L1 and then your Y values in L2. So I've already done that for this table. X's are 6, 10, 14, 18. You can see them all typed in L1. And then you can see all the Y values, 0.8, 1, 1.2, all typed in the L2 column. Once you've entered your data, you are going to press stat calc and then option A for power regression. So stat, go to the right where it says calc. And if you press the up arrow, you'll get there faster because it's at the very bottom, power regression. Okay, and then you are going to go to the bottom and press calculate. And then you're going to see an A value, a B value. That's the values you care about. And so if your A value, let's see, it says round all to the nearest hundredths. That's 2 decimal places. Okay, and so for this particular problem, A would be 0.33. B is approximately 0.5. Or, yeah, I'll just say 0.5 because we're going to write it as a square root function. Okay, and so our square root equation would be approximately 0.33 square root of x. So your only job is to really make sure your b value is close to 1/2. In this case, it is 0.48. And then just write down what your a value is. That's where I'm getting that 0.33. Okay, and it's also important to notice there's no like plus or minus number after this. And so your starting point for these graphs are always 0, 0. Okay, and so your domain is going from 0 to infinity, and your range is also going from 0 to infinity. It's going to the right for your domain, it's going up for your range. Okay, and so it says use the square root equation to predict the period of the pendulum that is 40 inches long. Round your answer to the nearest hundredth. Okay, and so remember the period, your time was y. So we're predicting the y. Predict the y for when the x is 40. Okay, so using my equation, we are plugging in x equals 40. Okay, and so we can use our calculator and we can type in 0.33 square root of 40. And it's about 2.0, it says round your answer to the nearest hundredth, so 2.09. And then the length, that was the length, and the period is measured in seconds. And so 2.09 seconds. Okay, from there, use the square root equation to find the length. That's y. That's x of a pendulum that has a period of 3 seconds. That's y. Period is y. Going back to the table, period is y, length is x. So find x when the period is 3. And so using my equation, this time we're plugging in 3 for y. Okay, and so here we actually have to do some solving. And so without using the calculator just yet, your first step would be to divide both sides by the 0.33. Which would give me square root of x equals 3 over the 0.33. And then we're ready to square both sides. Okay, and so x is 3 over 0.33 squared. And it says round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so 3 divided by 0.033, 0.33 squared. About 82.6. And then that is measured in inches. On AP tests, they care a lot about units, so we're trying to train y'all to include units. Okay, and so starting from the top, a sprinkler uses a rotating pipe to water a lawn. The table shows the length of the pipe needed based on the area. So area is our x, length is our y. Based on, depends. So use power regression function to find an equation that fits this data. Okay, and so we're going to go back to our calculator, and then you can either reset your calculator or you can go to go to stat, edit, and then if you already have data typed in, go up to the top and press clear, enter. Go up to the L1, press clear, enter. Don't press delete. You'll delete the entire column and then you'll have to reset your calculator to get it back. Okay, so typing in my x's in L1. Typing the y's in L2. And then stat, go to the right, press calc, scroll up for option A, calculate. And then here we see our B value is really close to 0.5 and that our A value is 117.26 square root of x. Okay. And so now how much area, that's x, area is x, length is y, what is x using a pipe that is 5,000 when your length is 5,000, that's your y. Okay, and so we are plugging in this 5,000 for our y. Okay, and so to solve this, your first step is to divide by the 117.26, leaving me with square root of x equals that 5,000 divided by 117.26, and then we are ready to square both sides. And so x equals we are doing parenthesis 5,000 divided by 117.26 squared. 1,818.19. Does it say it around? It doesn't say it around. We'll do hundredths. 19. And we are predicting the area, which is yards squared. That would be the area that you can water. Okay, so for these last ones, you are just practicing typing them in the calculator. And so if you do it correctly, for this first one, you should get y equals 82.71 square root of x. If you do the second one correctly, you should get 0.785 square root of x. And if you do the third one correctly, you should get 170.95 square root of x. So again, you just follow these instructions: stat edit, enter your data, and then stat calc, scroll up to get to power regression.